All systems go as we continue here. Happy Halloween. And it continues again. Artist Journal, October 31st, 2025, broadcasting from the inner half of the nervous system. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. Fighting demons on the spiritual plane are the words that enter my brain. Rhyming effortlessly. So here we go. A very exciting show ahead of us. As usual, my name's Adrian Pocobelli. A very exciting show ahead of us. As we continue here, so I was going to say, thankfully, Art Basel is finished. There's some construction downstairs. Apologies if you can hear that. I don't think you can, hopefully. Thankfully, Art Basel is done, so I can catch my breath and everything here. But man, that was a lot of fun, and it was super interesting. And again, always fun to contrast that with what we're up to over here. It's very interesting. I've met a few kind of digital art people while I've been out here, as well, out here in Paris. And it's quite interesting to just, the divide that exists between the two digital art and I guess the physical art scene. I think in 100 years, this will all be considered the same scene. It seems inevitable, doesn't it? And so it is all quite interesting. In a sense, finally, from a personal perspective, I worry less, I don't worry about it, interestingly, but perhaps I should. I mean, there's money on the line, I guess, and I guess to a certain degree. Put it this way, the reason I don't worry is because I feel like, history will vindicate what it is, at least what I, hope that I am working on. I just assume that history will vindicate it, as I think we all have to assume as artists, cultural, producers, or however you want to put it. So I don't worry about it too much. But it's interesting. And perhaps it, I was having a conversation with someone while here, a prominent collector, and I was saying, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I'm not getting too worried about, things here. Let's not turn mountains into let's not turn molehills into mountains. As I hit the 3-minute mark here. But as that person said, well, it does matter, though. And I think, yes, there are certain things here that matter. It's true, but the kind of day-to-day stuff, I don't really worry about. The art will sort itself out. The history will sort itself out. In a sense, it's, probably, we're going to get into it. There's actually a ton to get through. So actually, let's just begin. Look at this series. I think it's Orkan, the name of the artist. I mean, this is pretty amazing here. Let us look here. Let me just actually bring up, who is this? Orkan. O-R-K-H-A-N, Orkan Art. I had never heard of this person. Putting out this drop with OpenSea. It's quite spectacular. We've been looking the last couple of episodes at the previews that have been coming up on just as GIFs on X, but this is quite interesting. Like when you click on it, it actually changes. Like this is full-on interactive art. It seems to be using, and I'm not a huge interactive art person, but it's hard not to be impressed by the combination of technology and aesthetics going on here. It's really hard not to be impressed. I mean, you click on the horse, and it's the bottom of the horse. So it seems to be using AI, right? You click. And then, and also this, I guess what used to be facial recognition technology, I mean, this is more just object recognition technology. So, so all very interesting, but cutting edge, you might call it surveillance technology, which is being reappropriated. Now, this is not the first time I've seen, these beautiful squares. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? It's not the first time I've seen, say, these, horse, as we see these identification, Flag Day, that doesn't look right? Is that a horse? And then you have the person, cowboy hat is correct. It's not the first time I've seen this, though. At Art Basel, there was There was actually one of the few digital artworks I saw did seem to be using this. And so using this technology, as we're going to even see in this episode, I think there's 2 other artists who are using this technology, which to a certain degree I think is great in the sense that, I return to Ballard's important essays on, say, William Burroughs. What did he call it? A mythographer or of the 20th century, or mythologist of the 20th century? It's been a while. A fantastic essay on William Burroughs by J.G. Ballard. But as he described there, describing the world on its own terms, as he put it, or using the vocabulary, in a sense, the imagery of the present, as well as the techniques, and you might say, how shall we describe it? I guess the processes, but the logic, we might say, the visual logic of the time. And here, one could argue surveillance technology is kind of the equivalent, we might say here. And we can go back to Baudelaire. I believe it's in the Modern Painter, where Charles Baudelaire also says, important art critic too, interestingly, where Baudelaire says the world of the present is kind of, the importance, where he highlights and emphasizes the importance of the present. So this all, factoring in here as we return to the work and go, oh, this is pretty cool. Again, this beautiful melding, fusion of aesthetics and technology. Quite beautiful, these aesthetics. Anyways, let's continue. I wonder if I was even on the allow list, because, I had a history of collecting NFTs on OpenSea way back. And I was wondering, because a lot of people were on the allow list. I wonder how much it would have even costed. I have no idea. But as you see here, taking all of these works from here, I'll just bring up this work here. As you see, this is a video. So taking famous works, canonical works from art history, and applying pretty sophisticated technology. What I love about this, what's impressive, truly impressive, is the artist, or frankly, it almost looks like a team, but maybe it's just one artist. The artist didn't stop at just, what we see here with the highlighting and using this object recognition technology, and stopping there and going, oh, isn't that cool? But actually adding what looks like an AI addition to the whole thing, where all of a sudden you're getting these variations, it looks like created by AI, selecting the work that is being recognized, oftentimes falsely, this being a sea snail, as you see here, and then substituting it probably with AI. So not only is it using this, image, facial recognition technology, object recognition technology, however you want to, surveillance technology, not only is it using that, but it's also substituting. So really putting in going that extra mile, you might say, in the work. Let me just pause that. And as you see here, maybe this is a bit of a window into what's going on here.
History falls the same way, written by victors, erased by silence. What's called true is often fiction, carefully replayed. Then the machine intervenes. It hallucinates, remembers by reshaping, bending a fragile mirror of the mind, always in flux. Porsche, Bruegel, holding, this visions fractured, tilting.
I have to say, what a production. So you can check that out on Orkin's feed. Pretty awesome. So this was called Visions. Interesting title too. So a very ambitious work here. Let me just make sure we have our ideal internet. With my phone, internet is actually quite good out here in Paris. Let us continue. So taking Bosch, of course, as you see. So these are just videos of basically someone interacting with the work. So super interesting work. It looks like a big sellout here. Each work interactive. Every touch triggers images to rewrite themselves, just as our perception is rewritten with each memory. So here it gets a little bit more esoteric, for lack of a better term, but quite interesting what they're doing here, what Orkin is doing. Here's one more. You know, I have to say it kind of breathes life into some of these older works. I mean, if you were just to see this bird work on its own, perhaps it would feel a touch kind of boring, right? I often talk about 17th and 18th century boring paintings as being like the brown, you could call it the brown period as far as I'm concerned, and the reason it's like that, as I've discussed here before, which is really the academic style, which is often you put a sepia underneath academic painting, and which was kind of, I think, came down really from the Renaissance and probably Rubens and all these people. This tradition where you start with brown and then you start layering up your painting, the oil painting, and so that's why you oftentimes, and so you leave below, so that's why they're all brown. It's because the foundation is brown, right? And so, at least so I think, and so you see the importance again and the revolution of Impressionism when you see these browns. But let me just pause that so it doesn't cause us any problems later. So also just a couple of news bits here before we get to the comments. One Bit Horror, very excited about this show. Pocobelli collection put out, and here it is. Just thrilled to put this very fun narrative together. It's almost like comic book style is how I treated this curation of these 4 brilliant artists who I thought went really well together, all sharing, some more than others, all sharing kind of a 1-bit, even Limbo there, who's pretty illustrative, but still having, this dithering and whatnot, all kind of combining kind of pixelation in varying degrees and horror together. And yeah, just wonderful works like this Steve Jobs here with the, just to give you a sense. 1-Bit Necro. I was so pleased to put 1-Bit Necro in the works, and they're all from my personal collection here. This artist is so underrated, and I think so unappreciated. And I think I understand why. In a sense, 1-Bit Necro is not an easy artist. In a sense, as I put it in the artist statement, this is not, 1-Bit Necro, they're kind of the spiritual center. I'd say they're the main inspiration behind the show. And so just like brilliant works like this, and let me just show you, I of course highlighted, but just even works like this, in a sense, weirdly, these are not easy. I would argue. It took me some time but it's an acquired taste. Let's put it that way with 1-Bit Necro. But like all the great artists that we've been discovering that are kind of hard at first, they sometimes become your absolute favorites. And 1-Bit Necro is definitely one of my favorites. Of course, some of the other artists are Popple, Zofio Gore, and Limbo. I used those 4 artists as the foundation of the collection. And Zofi actually created a couple of new works. I actually brought them up here just for us to look at. Popple, though, let me just show you quickly, one of the classics of Hiket Nunk and of just Tezos art here, After Party. This is my introduction to, this is about when I started paying attention. How lucky was I? Because I first minted on Hen on December 2021, and then I started taking it seriously around mid-February. Thanks to Haiti Rocket's collection. This is an absolute classic here on Hiket Nunk. All systems go, this kind of sci-fi 1-bit, and there's also generative art in here, probably in the stars that are going by, I assume. Maybe it's in the computer over here. Yeah, in this computer area. So again, just another amazing artist. So I'm really excited about this. I've put some work into the exhibition text, but it's actually, I want to keep expanding on it. I think this is a very important genre here. And you see actually, if you go to the exhibition text, you'll see what seems to be the spiritual inspiration, so to speak, or aesthetic, I should say, inspiration, World of Horror, this video game. Which actually, Zofia Gore looked at the text and she's like, actually, on 4chan, this was a thing back in 2015 even. The first screenshots were coming out. So pretty awesome. So again, just really happy about this show, and thank you to all the artists who appeared in it. Zofia Gore made a couple of new works here, and she also did this awesome video. Zofia appreciated the curation, which I treated like a comic book. I treated this like a museum, basically, in my head, where you were going from work to work as if from wall to wall and room to room. There is a text here. So all to say, yeah, and she highlighted some of these transitions, this one here, very happy about it. And this work right here, NFT TV, is just an absolute classic, still available for a couple of bucks, not even. So get it while you can. A classic for your collection. And here are the works by Zofia Gore Porcelainus. So some beautiful, very wonderfully small works here from Zofia Gore for the 1-Bit Horror Show, edition of 6. And here is actually, sorry, that was an open edition for 666. And here's an edition of 10, still available. A wonderful piece. I can't believe this is still available. Available for 13 Tezos. Absolute steal there. Also, a big thank you to Art on Tezos, who did invite me and made me a media sponsor, or a media partner, I should say. So here I am, Artist Journal, so wonderful. There is the logo. So I will appear in Berlin next week. So a homecoming, so to speak, or a return to Berlin there for a few days. And also, and here is actually what I'll be appearing at on November 7th, which is Friday, a roundtable at noon. If you are in Berlin, I'll be there with Danielle King of Right Click Save. I didn't realize she was with Danielle King, and I'm actually looking forward to meeting Janice Surdis, collector, who's actually the first person to ever bid on my work when I started at Super Rare in 2020. So that should be fun. What was the title called? The Taste? Something to do with taste. Roundtable, The Art of Developing Taste. So that sounds like a fun one. And Fanny Lacube of 100 Collectors is going to moderate it. I think I actually met her the other day in Paris. So wonderful. And also, I mentioned this last episode. So John Bezold, Mr. Bezold, hilarious. I love this. Thank you for sending me this awesome one of one. Of course, very important book in 20th century English writing. And of course, Bezold, Mr. Bezold, doing other variations here. And again, thank you again to John Bezold, who did an interview actually in September with me. So for his super cool Dutch Art and Design podcast. So big thank you. Let's check out the comments on Ugly Aesthetics. Very fun episode from last Friday. It's kind of going weekly right now. I'm very, very busy as far as the Monday, Wednesday kind of historical shows. I may open them up though in almost kind of a live stream sort of way. I may experiment with that. Not sure if this week is the week with the traveling to Berlin, but it's still top of mind. Let's put it this way. Still on my mind. Let's check out the comments here. Melina. I remember when the whole NFT first bombed and everyone I knew wanted to experiment and share their ideas. I tried and experimented the whole process, but after a while, I noticed the marketplace was basically a pump and dump scam from what I saw. Yes, so many people had that experience. Several top artists on different markets had several accounts, so they basically sold their own pieces and increased their value every time they sold them. You can check anyone's digital wallet and see how the money moved back and forth. At that point, I discovered I was not interested on following the next most sold asset, Bored Apes, cats, etc. And on top of that, helping traders, not really artists that paid pennies to people that knew how to use the technology to sell, buy, and resell stuff. So helping traders, not artists. You can actually find ads asking for digital artists to do pieces for shady companies and pages like Fiverr. I actually remember that. When people would use Fiverr as a way to get an illustrator for a PFP project because so much money was being thrown at this NFT craze. Of course, only getting paid $10 or less. I do find very interesting the whole digital aspect and tokenization of art, since that sounded very attractive for artists to avoid getting out our art stolen. But unfortunately, this new media has been used for the opposite, in fact, and most artists now consider NFT not art, which is a shame since we always have used technology and we need to evolve the same way the world moves forward. It's quite interesting, this whole issue, right, of NFTs, digital art, how the art world sees it. It's interesting, the people I meet here in Paris in digital, to hear their struggle to be taken seriously by the institutions. Because here, Paris is a big city with a lot of kind of major art. There's a lot of art money, is how I would describe it. And it's different from Berlin. Berlin is a little bit more grassroots and, how shall we say, it's respectable and there are major galleries there. Apologies if you hear the hammering. Welcome to my life. We are just, it is one take here. So let's pray it doesn't get too loud. Let's continue. Hash, many thanks. Well, thank you, Hash. Good to hear from you. Roon Toon, I'm never disappointed to see you sharing the work of Hasdrubal Waffle. There's a strange reaction I have to their work, which is that I like it so much I wish I could befriend Hasdrubal in real life. Isn't that peculiar? I mean, there's a lot of real artists you could share. There's a lot of really cool artists you share, and I'd like to meet them all, but with Hasdrubal specifically, I yearn to know them beyond the digital. I know what you mean. Don't know what that means, but if you are in contact with Hasdrubal, please give them my kindest regards. Yeah, it's sort of on and off. In a sense, like I don't have a direct line to Waffles, but we have messaged in the past, but there's no direct line. Of course, the accounts are kind of coming and going. So if Waffles happens to be watching, kindest regards from Roon Toon. Great to hear from you, Roon. Almazionis, or Tom Bombattle, good to hear from you. And Udo XYZ, great to hear from you too. Yosoon, greetings. Which platform would you recommend right now? One high-res digital source files. Original. On or off chain? On or off chain, thank you. You know, if you're starting out and you have no collectors, I would go with something like Tezos. I think is your best bet of being seen, because there's not as many people minting on Tezos as Object, but you still appear on Object, and so you'll still, and generally speaking, in order to build a kind of collector base, I would argue Tezos is the good place to start. There's probably people from ETH who would disagree with that, or who only collect on ETH who would disagree with that. Another place you can go is manifold.xyz, which is basically open to anybody, and that will appear on different platforms. So I would say Manifold if you want to be on Ethereum, but if you're trying to build a collector base, what I would do is I'd mint on both Tezos and Ethereum. So I'd start with Teia, Teia.art, and then I would, once you have some collectors, maybe expand to Manifold, and even go to Bitcoin if you can make super small, tiny files, low-res digital files. Thank you for the comment or the question. Enchanter the Tim, it's baffling that you call any of this gorgeous work, where there are thousands of unrepresented and underappreciated artists that are actually technically skilled, making aesthetically beautiful art with a message. Well, I try and do everything here. Anything that's interesting, and let's continue. It almost seems like the art that looks, it almost seems you like art that looks bad just because you're not supposed to. It's kind of amazing for me actually to hear this, in the sense that I feel like I know where you're coming from. I feel like I've been on the other side of this conversation. Isn't that funny how life works? Let's finish the comment and I'll comment a little bit more because it challenges the viewer so much. It is interesting. I mean, you know, it's sort of like I was saying with 1-bit necro. Like I feel like maybe this commenter might think that 1-bit necro is not a big deal of an artist, which is kind of, I didn't think One Bit Necro was that great. I thought it was kind of weird and I didn't really like it. I don't even know. I don't know if I didn't like it, but I wasn't like excited about it. Here I am though, 3 years later, and I'm super excited about it, more excited than ever because I'm seeing how well it's standing the test of time. So I'm kind of back to sometimes what seems challenging at first, sometimes it's like music. How many albums have you not liked at first, and then those are sometimes your favorite albums, right? So I would say keep an open mind, and I am not doing quote-unquote ugly or challenging work in order to, provoke. But I'm interested in work that provokes, and that provokes me, and so if I feel like there's a kind of legitimacy to that provocation and that it's not kind of haphazard and gratuitous, then I am all over showing that work and go, okay, what do we think of this? In my opinion, that's simply not a good enough reason to like a piece and signal boost it, but honestly, I've never understood the art world and I've always been frustrated by it. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. And what I would just say is, I've been doing this 3 years now, so you do tend to, your taste does evolve. So I'm not sure, I would say if you're within the last 6 months, if you're kind of paying close attention or you recently discovered the show, I would say have patience and give it time. Because in a sense, as I opened the show with, I'm actually confident, and everybody has to be confident if they're in the art space, whether you're artist, curator, or otherwise. I've put it this way. My goal here is not to, I'd love to make $1 million doing this, but the primary goal is actually to do something that will stand the test of time, particularly from a art perspective. So I don't do it lightly if I show quote unquote challenging work. I do it with the expectation and the hope that that view will be ratified in the coming decades and further. So yes, so just so you know, so I don't do it lightly, and it's not kind of casual, the decisions I make here from, I suppose, a curatorial point of view. Like say the One Bit Horror Show, for me, that's something which, looking forward to seeing how people feel about it in 40 years. It's like, if I ran the world, that would be in a museum, that show, and of course, from my perspective, I made it as a museum show. I hope one day that will be given the treatment it deserves, and you can go from room to room and enjoy the onebithorror.exe show. It has been designed to last decades, so let's hope. That's why I'm going back to the artist statement. So I don't do things casually here, even though it might appear that way. Thank you for the comment. Mad Geek responding, the images shown in the second half of the video are all stemming from the same current. I wonder what we're talking about here. I find them really beautiful and interesting. They also require some amount of technical skill and a particular interest in the niche and understanding where they come from. And again, I believe the work can stand on its own. And sometimes it's about getting to know an artist. And I agree with people who say I shouldn't have to read an artist statement to understand the work. And I'm in totally agreement with that. In a sense, it's visual communication we're engaged in. So for the most part, an artist statement should not be required. Of course, an artist statement should be seen as boosting things, but not as essential, as I would say with the One Bit Horror Show, which I trace back to Romanticism from a thematic point of view. So let's continue. Every drawing, painting, or song has its own niche of people enjoying or looking at it. The important part is that it resonates with some people and the artist enjoyed creating it. Yeah, and that, from my perspective, that it's truly significant insofar as we can determine that. Mad Geek, given it's not AI generated, of course, also NFTs suck. So thank you, Mad Geek, for weighing in, and let's just take a quick look on X. Thank you for the big response here to Ugly Aesthetics with that beautiful waffles piece beginning the show. Another great show. Keep it coming, Poco. Thank you for sharing too. You're welcome, Wojak. It's looking good. I like the direction. I think everything's coming together quite nicely for you. Wojak Dance Vitar, super episode, Poco. Those first waffles works are divine. I can't seem to find their account either on Object nor here on X. Do you have a link? Yeah, so it was in the, they were selling for a lot of money. So you'll find them if you go to the top sales on Object. you'll find the accounts. Is the name of the artist who makes the first artwork disclosed in this video? So it's so funny. I believe it says Drupal Waffle, but under anonymous accounts, sometimes it's just a name, like a Tezos address, anonymous address. Ugo Digi, ugly aesthetic is beautiful. I actually think this is quite a profound point, Ugo, because that is the question. Ultimately, when you're saying the ugly work is worth remembering, to a certain degree, you are arguing it's beautiful. So I think you're kind of hitting on something important in that comment. Continuing on, Turemza. Surreal Traffic, thanks for featuring me, Adrian. It did, if you're talking about the post here, it had 50 retweets within, I want to say, like 12 hours. That was pretty amazing. So thank you again to all those people who are supporting the show. It's really appreciated. Great to hear from you, Turemza, and rad artwork. Turemza has some really cool still lifes, I think from back in 2021 that I've never forgotten. Just really cool work. And also the new work is pretty cool too. I believe, I can't remember if it's object or facial recognition technology, but it seems along those lines. Continuing on, My Eye, great to hear from you. Fantastic episode. Universe Reality Alternative, happy Halloween, and happy Halloween to everybody here. Aria, another awesome episode, thank you. Thousand Lands, great shows. Zozo Works, give me the tingles. Indeed. Martin Bruce, great to hear from you. Great show, Adrian. Tornado Rodriguez, congrats on the new show. Can't wait to see it. Also, thanks for showing my last drops, means a lot to me. You're welcome, Tornado. A rad artist we've had on the Pocobelli collection. Giant, how did I not find your journal earlier? This is brilliant. I absolutely love your content. I would be honored if you would consider reviewing my conceptual photography project, Giant. It deals with body perception, stereotypes, and finding acceptance, which often touches on the raw, unconventional aesthetic. Would love to hear your honest take. Well, it looks pretty interesting. I don't know if I'd consider it standard fare here. Kind of risque fare here. Interesting is what I would say. Thank you for posting. I was thinking, I think Kant has actually worked along similar lines in the past. If you find that account. PJP Art, great journals, always thank you. No Hygiene, awesome to hear from you. A few works by No Hygiene this episode. Vaxorus, great to hear from you. DV Ghost, Kurt Hustle Collective. DV Ghost, great to hear from you. KHC, great to hear from you. Su Zeliang, come to see you. Yes, please do. Scott Roth, great to hear from you. Thousand Lands, Waffles is rad. Waffles' work is rad. Andre Balestrero, finally. Could it be a coincidence that being Artist Journal sporadic these weeks, the activity on objects seems, at least judging from the number of notifications I get, to have switched to sleepy mode? Or is gay NFT stealing the show? About Larry and a bit of nostalgia for the good old times, async art. Interesting. Larry's super powerful. It does concern me sometimes. I felt like we saw a lull in August, but at first it was like, was that in some of the artists that I show here? And I thought, well, maybe that's just an August thing. So it's an interesting question. I don't know how much the show impacts the market. It's an interesting question. So I am here. We're still doing things weekly here, and for Art on the Blockchain. Feels like a nice, frankly, rhythm. And I also am interested in, again, trying to do more of kind of a stream style on Monday and Wednesday. Because otherwise I won't do it. It's just the time commitment. So I'm going to try stream style, kind of research in real time with comments. Could be an interesting show. Shalmiette will survive. Another great episode. And Mr. Hoddle, very charming. Thank you. So interesting comments out there. Charlotte Fang, who is maybe the preeminent account in the so-called gay NFT scene. And again, it's what it is. For people who are watching for the first time, that is what they call it. That is what they call themselves. We pioneered, so here's Charlotte Fang, again, kind of preeminent voice in that scene. It's kind of, we have pioneered an entirely new avant-garde with Avant NFT. So this is another way of describing it. Achieving maybe Avant NFT is a little bit more easier to say. I'm not sure if that steps on toes, interestingly. There are different factions in that scene, from what I understand. Achieving entire new modes of art, taking both finance and network art to scales previously impossible in the Avant NFT scene. Blockchain art, so art that uses blockchain as a medium, is generally what is meant by blockchain art, has not done anything of any remotely similar note. That's an interesting question. I mean, I thought they did all sorts of things with network. I'm not an expert in blockchain art, though, by any stretch. Temporary prestige is assigned to the latter, to blockchain art, only because it's restricted itself to maintaining the mores and limitations of presentation in legible institutional form. Yeah, I think it's because blockchain art works because it's seen as using a new medium. And in that respect, I think it becomes significant in itself. Like if you put ChatGPT, if you put in like what's after digital art and this sort of thing, if you start asking these kinds of questions, or what is the contemporary art of the last 20 years, you start getting stuff like blockchain art being discussed. Which is interesting. I'm kind of like, to me, there's almost a bit of a technology first approach with so-called blockchain art and the way that I think the institutions approach these new scenes. And I've always been kind of basically, I don't know if aesthetics first, but image first. You know, what is significance first? Because that is, of course, what we're doing here with visual communication. We're, as I like to say, kind of like significance ninjas is kind of what artists are, right? And so that's my starting point, which I think might actually separate me to a certain degree from a lot of the general voices out there in terms of just having my kind of artist journal kind of commentary here. Temporary prestige, okay, so is assigned to blockchain art. This is not why they failed to approach an avant-garde, but it's an obvious symptom of that failure. But history will not care about small fry critics and dealers glazing their empty niche. This is where I start to kind of really enjoy Charlotte Fang, who I think is a super controversial account, and I hardly know anything that they've posted in the past. I've just started to pay attention. But history will not care about small fry critics and dealers glazing their empty niche, especially not when the avant-garde standing next to you has... Now, avant-garde itself seems kind of retro, like as Camille Pally, pointed out that kind of pop art put the final nails in the coffin to the avant-garde, which I'm quite sympathetic to. So I'm not sure what Charlotte Fang is talking about is, oh, now we have an avant-garde. To me, I think early 20th century when I think of avant-garde. Maybe 1940s at latest, 1950s. It's an interesting question. I mean, is John Cage avant-garde? Interesting. Let's continue, though. Let's give Charlotte Fang the charity of interpretation here, especially not when the avant-garde standing next to you has exploded open the study of both finance and network. The two conditions that will define this century. It's funny. I wrote an artist statement in 2012 for a series of oil paintings called Futures and Options, where I argued the two big, themes of the 21st century were finance and technology. Not that far. Finance and network. I could dig up that artist statement. Perhaps I should. I spent a year on that artist statement. The two conditions that will define the century. So interesting as it goes, quote, Google me next century. If you don't agree, debate me, end the art media embargo on Fang. So insofar as this is art media here, there's no embargo on Charlotte Fang over here. In fact, I have 3 or 4 more tweets. I think this is all quite interesting. I don't use words like this, nor do I condone it, frankly. I think it's really... You know what I don't like about this word, and I've mentioned it in the past, that's highlighted here, is that this is, I would argue, derogatory and attacking people who can't really fight back. And so I just find that repulsive, actually, just from my own personal perspective, but we won't stop it from seeing what else Charlotte has to say. If you don't agree, debate me and the art media embargo on Fang, cover the thesis, cover what has clearly been the most impactful, influential movement in American art in the last 5 years. Now, I think this is referring to, I actually prefer the term avant NFT. It's less 4chan-y. And so I But I would argue, actually, the work I've covered here on this show is actually a pretty good competitor. I'm not sure if Charlotte Fang knows a lot about the work that we've shown on this show. I would actually argue aesthetically, it's quite a contender, in fact. So it's kind of interesting, but I'm not sort of a either or person. There may be a lot to what Charlotte Fang is saying. Give my long posting interview in an actual outlet, not some throwaway Twitter space or podcast. So all the hack artists can finally face the fact that real art has come back, and all the real young artists can see where it's come to be and save them before they're lost to cynicism of the corrupt art world, pressure to them to defend themselves. They'll lose in every situation. They can't escape by pretending not to see it. Here's another post by Charlotte Fang. So as we start to unpack this avant NFT scene, sometimes called gay NFTs, Charlotte Fang, Milady, which was the first project, I think, to embody the avant NFT scene. Apologies to all who prefer gay NFT. I'm going to call it avant NFT. I much prefer that. Milady is for cypherpunks, cyber anarchists, Landian accelerationists. Now, as far as I understand accelerationism, it's those people who want technology to increasingly speed up in order to bring about catastrophe, so that the new world can be born. So I think a pretty irresponsible kind of philosophy, but you know what? That's the kind of philosophy that sounds good on paper, and when you go to an artist talk and you want to call yourself an accelerationist, and oh, aren't you fancy and edgy? But in reality, for those people that have friends and family and who are real people in this world, believe in a responsible citizenship, I find this whole accelerationist thing completely ridiculous and irresponsible. Just for the record. As far as I understand it. Let's continue. Finance punks, whatever femboys are, SoundCloud rappers, transgenders, disinformationalists, not sure what those are, cyborg, anons, revolutionaries, trolls, federalists, hypebeasts, pirates, preppers, the bros, incels, not Reddit though. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if this stuff goes mainstream. So what can we determine here? And I kind of touched on this last episode, which for me, when you start to see this, like how do you start to frame this culturally speaking? And I see basically, it's kind of like the 4chan of the digital art world. There's something very 4chan-y about this whole scene. And I don't say that as a negative in a sense. Like I say that more observationally. There's something very which is there's some, just in the word gay NFT, we see that kind of like, or the use of the, what some people call the R word there, and just this kind of uncensored, right? And kind of like discussion forums, truly uncensored. 4chan is kind of next level. I assume it still exists. Like I don't even visit it because it's like, are you gonna end up on some list by going to 4chan? I don't know, but I've been hearing about it, of course, for I think at least 10 years. I'm sure it's been around a lot longer. Kind of one of So again, as we try and frame the scene that, say, Charlotte Fang is in, and kind of, I would argue, seemingly the preeminent voice, I think from a content perspective, we can start to see it as kind of like a 4chan of sorts, if not of the digital art scene, you could even argue of the contemporary art scene. In a sense, the avant NFT could be seen as a kind of ghetto in the NFT scene, and NFTs are a ghetto of the contemporary art scene. So the ghetto of the ghetto, and maybe that's not the right word to use, but for lack of a better term. Charlotte Fang, whatever this stuff happens, it's just pumping. So referring to the LinkedIn founder getting a CryptoPunk, it's just pumping an empty speculative investment. So I'm bringing this up so that we can learn more about the kind of the underpinning, the conceptual underpinnings of this scene, which is quite interesting. It's not a statement of commitment to any kind of radicalism. It's not the future of finance. It's just announcing you've thrown weight behind Pokemon cards or Beanie Babies. It's always embarrassing, so referring to buying a CryptoPunk. It's always embarrassing we're put in the same category as that stuff. Putting on a milady will always be different. Milady means committing to outsideness, to the anarchist internet, to the cypherpunk resistance against the state by force, the fight against algorithmic propaganda and government and social censorship. There are a few, so again, right, I'm kind of back to, is this the 4chan of the digital art scene or of the art scene? There are a few subcultures remaining that truly maintain an underground filter resisting all attempts at commercial co-option. It's going to be interesting to see. Milady is branded with the mark of post-cancelled avant-garde art terror. Milady means wearing the banner of the perfect cancel-baiting, self-martyring scapegoat of the anorexia cult. Milady is umbrella to the radical online. I mean, they're wondering. Charlotte Fang is wondering why they're not in mainstream media. Unfortunately, I mean, this is, in a sense, it brings about a profound issue because all of a sudden I'm like, oh, should I say these words here? Is this gonna, shadow ban the account? Which I think actually is to Charlotte Fang's point and is part of the reason why I actually bring it up here. People can read the words here. And so, yeah, in a sense, I'm giving this attention. Milady is the reverse propaganda, as far as this, relatively small audience is concerned. Milady is the reverse propaganda Trojan horse that first psyoped all of crypto back to its cypherpunk roots, and next the world onto cypherpunk. Milady will always be different and must always stay extreme, always outside and always dragging those lost inside out with us, because if we don't, no one else will. I would say pretty interesting, pretty provocative, and we have more. And I think we're learning a lot, actually, recently from Charlotte Fang. Look at the replies. There's an entire other world of art on the blockchain out there LARPing as avant-garde for doing squiggle NFTs. Who would cancel you in a second if they were able to make out the Milady PFP behind the 3 degrees of derivative and sticker edits? So it's all quite interesting. Now, it's weird in the sense that I had several shows where I was distinguishing crypto art from art on the blockchain. I feel like since then, art on the blockchain has become more of a thing. I'm sure it existed in some respect previously. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to come up with art on the blockchain, but now it's being used in a sense for what I would consider, crypto art, the squiggles, art that's embraced by the crypto community. So who knows, as we continue the slippery nature of words here. We're not dealing with mathematics finally. Charlotte Fang, the thing is just art still committed to this is just art still committed to the dealer critic gallery model that defines the contemporary art world, which is the last 2 decades got aggressively optimized to the point of being a purely cynical pseudo-art financial complex and merged entirely with the MFA university pipeline. Critics killed and replaced fully with planted press, no pressure on artists to actually do engaging art, rather than just produce brand work following their art agent's guidance with just enough pretense of depth that can be pitched to give plausibility to the paid praise secured to prop up a market between the dealer and gallerist. It's almost like another way of summarizing this is like, for lack of a better term, almost to use like 20th century terminology. It's like the bourgeoisification of the art scene. And in a sense, I'm quite sympathetic to a lot of, the sentiment that Charlotte Fang is bringing up here. That's why I'm, again, sharing this. I find this very provocative in a good way. I think there's a point in here without, endorsing, or it's sort of like people, retweets are not endorsements here. That's why it feels so empty and dead, because it is. I think there's something to be said, and that was my big criticism of Art Basel Paris. A lot of great looking art, a lot of competent art, but did it meet the moment? And I would argue the answer is no. And, you go, hey, if Charlotte Fang had been curating, would it have met the moment? Or you have more of a 4chan inspired curation, as I'm calling it. It would have felt a little edgier. like you were somewhere of cultural import. Whereas I would say from a purely significance perspective, nothing happened last week at Art Basel Paris. From a significance perspective, nothing happened other than the fact that it occurred and there wasn't much digital. That was, I'd say, the main takeaway. And it was very competent, but it did not meet the moment. I think this is, so maybe Charlotte Fang would agree. That's why it feels so empty and dead, because it is. And that's why the new art is not art to any insider, because art is just whatever can be produced can be productized in the institutional complex known as the art world. And the new net art, this is interesting. The new net art, that is an interesting way of what I'd call art on the blockchain, as we have all our different definitions here. The new net art is not just a rabid guerrilla outsider, but is invisible to their own incentive matrix. I'd argue what they're doing is actually art on the blockchain. They don't care at all about pioneering art itself. This was a job for the few rare independent critics who've all been starved to death after 15 years of only dead art. Yeah, and I don't consider, by the way, because a lot of times people will say, what I do here is reviews, and I consider myself like a visual DJ, is what I do. I put together DJ sets, and that is what I'm doing here. These are not art reviews, by the way, but I do have our commentary here. Avant art representative. So I think Avant NFTs, I think is, woke up and checked if my NFTs were still gay. So again, for those coming in, this is how the culture refers to itself. I'm being kind of observational and frankly semi-journalistic about it. This is what is being said. They're even gayer than before. How does this happen? And here's some of the kind of challenging aesthetics we're seeing here. I'm calling ugly aesthetics, potentially. So I'm hoping to also just kind of give us some visual education. Now, I have to say, I thought this was hilarious, and I'm pretty sure I'm following Nev back here, Never Clear. I thought this was awesome. Lazy Lions 2 so of course Lazy Lions, and I brought it up here, was what I'd call, and apologies to all concerned, one of the dumbest PFP collections of all time. It kind of epitomized how dumb the whole PFP thing was. Apologies to any aficionados. But it's hard to put any other words on it. Like, it was just, as you see here, these were going for $5,000 each so just a pure vehicles of speculation. Someone's put out Lazy Lions 2 from the Avant NFT scene. It's over, we're back, and so here are a few of them. And I think quite brilliant over here. This one is actually awesome, but unfortunately, I can't bring it up here. Maybe, I can just see Charlotte Fang being, see, this can't be right. So anyways, here's some more examples. I think this is like an amazingly hilarious, I almost started with it, the Lazy Lions 2. I think this is hilarious. Gay pride, so I guess referring to, and there's the lions on top. So I think this is brilliant. I mean, and you have to give credit to the subversive nature, the fact that I have to, be careful which words, I have to give explanatory. There's something to be said for this subversion and for, this kind of radically uncensored area. So it's interesting. It's all very interesting. Here's a couple of more. I think just hilarious. And yeah, okay. So it's just all very interesting, shall we say, gay rugcore NFTs. So as you see here, so Lazy Lions 2 Mint is live. I thought quite a creative, and again, it just feels like it's coming out of 4chan here, this whole scene. From a thematic, just from a cultural perspective, like how do you start to where do you put this, right? How do you start to figure out, how do you make sense of this? And so this was also a hilarious one, Gremlins 2. So I guess we have Lazy Lions 2, now we have Gremlins 2 movie. Is this an actual movie? No. So again, it looks like another sequel. And do we have examples? It looks like this main one, so kind of taking a gremlin form. And again, working with that PFP structure. Another thing, Nightcore is becoming a thing, and it actually brought up an interesting question. Because as it says here, the counter-revolution started with Milady, never forget, and then we have, you'll be night posting, so Nightcore is becoming a thing. And it brought up an interesting kind of thought, I thought, from my own perspective, which is, just because it's underground, say like this Nightcore thing, doesn't mean it's significant. Just because a bunch of people jump on the bandwagon and go, oh, now Nightcore is a thing, it doesn't mean that we should care. I would say. Now, we'll have an open mind, and maybe Nightcore is, something we should care about. But there is this kind of fetishization of the underground and the new next big thing that you've never heard about. Now, oh, is it Nightcore? And that in itself can be a cliche, I would argue. So before, at least I say to myself before, oh, now I'm excited about Nightcore, I say, well, let's see what this is. And is that just becoming a cliche of like and then it'll be the, plant core, and then it'll be lamp core, and then, just like, so let's see where it goes, is where I say, but that is a thing. This is kind of interesting too. Emma, my first NFT banner collection, reCAPTCHA Chibis, is launching. A pretty interesting, so using the CAPTCHA format, and don't really care for the music here, but this is kind of, as you see here, using the CAPTCHA format. So let's see what they do, but kind of interesting. We've seen it used many times before, but you see almost, I feel like we're seeing it with the Avant NFT scene. We're seeing it with over here, which seems like a different scene. We are seeing, again, a shift towards what I loosely call ugly aesthetics, and it's purposeful. Almost to that earlier commenter's point, like they're not totally out to lunch. So I understand. So far, they look at Lazy Lions too, and they go, you like this? Right? We'll see if that little bubble disappears. Okay, Deggy D. The digital screen itself is a pure, expressive, painterly temporal field. How are we doing? We're an hour in here. Remains largely unexplored by the mainstream art world. True. The irony is massive. Every artist uses screens, every collector lives through them, but the screen as a medium of experience is still treated as secondary or utilitarian. I wonder how long it will take before the mainstream starts to pay attention to one of the most exciting movements of the past decades in art. Indeed. And as I brought up here, what I call the second generation of digital art, I consider it an essential characteristic. Screen first, not needing, because, and that is, I would argue, not entirely, because we had video art literally for decades, which you could argue is screen first, but I'd argue it is a component of, what I call the second generation of digital art. Screen first uses a graphic user interface, UX, so like Photoshop. It's not programming in and seeing what comes out, but painting with a computer. And the third characteristic, people that grew up with video games. That is what I consider the second generation of digital art. And maybe that third point most important. We're actually going to see a couple of quotes here. So the screen is a major part of that. And it changes the aesthetic when you think screen first. And especially from a market perspective, because as anybody knows who is a digital artist before 2019, the main goal as a digital artist was, how are you going to make your work physical so you can actually sell it? Once you've made your work, what is your main goal? It's like, okay, how do I, make an iteration that's physical to actually live off of my art? Interesting point, and well put by Deggy D. Showerman. I want to explore the space between games and contemporary art, the perfect use case for digital art. So case in point here, art used to be a safe world I could control as a kid. Then gaming took over that role. Escaping into worlds without consequences is still one of the most relaxing things I know. So here it is, this fusion here by Showerman of games and contemporary art. And here's another example, actually, one of our favorite pixel artists here, Deadly Yuka. Let's see what this says. This is Indie Freaks. The journey of driving through the wilderness is full of foreign film vibe. True, an adventure where a man who lost his wife searches for a UFO that shouldn't exist. I saw a flying saucer. So here again, we see that fusion between video games and art. Again, that is Pocobelli collection. That is basically the main mantra, the main, and cutting edge digital art like the Kurt Hustle Collective. So I'll just say this is pretty rad, isn't it? Very nice treatment here. Very cool artist. We've shown their work a ton of times. MechTXT, who of course I follow. Word World, a collaboration of MechTXT and Figma. A vibe coded entirely in Figma makes. So isn't that interesting? So taking this Ultima 4 inspired UX and Mech did his own take on it and then kind of transformed it. It's important that Ultima 4 and Lord British is mentioned, I feel, though, because this is clearly inspired, as we've long discussed here, by Ultima 4. So Retro Map Builder, so anyways, looks super interesting and cool, and love those works, those MS-DOS works by mech.txt. Martin Bruce, an example of how digital art can be translated into a pictorial format, given it the unique material qualities of a physical object compared to its form on screen, which opens up endless possibilities for experimentation. So, traveling through the mediums, which Martin Bruce is big on, and it's true, it's endless. Once you start going from physical to digital and back, it becomes infinite. He's right. Martin Bruce, TD, acrylic and airbrush on canvas. So here, taking a test drive work and making it physical. So I think, again, this is an artist who I'd love to see at Art Basel. I feel like I could put together like a whole, section there at Art Basel of several galleries, actually. Maybe one day a Pocobelli collection will have a show there. Who knows how that works? Element Lee, image character interface. Here, again, this would have seemed a little bit more now, shall we say. Very interesting work, almost like an altarpiece by Element Lee. Altarpiece structure, what looks like a Game Boy. Interesting, almost like calligraphy type characters, but very, pixel art-esque. There's a Game Boy again. Foldable version, image character interface. And I believe I brought up this next one. So here it is, physical in the window. Rad work, isn't it? It's exciting, isn't it? Only, here, let me give some help to that. Algorithmic, Vertigo, where is this? Photo Veen. So that is in Vienna. October 28th to November 4th as we speak. So if you're in Vienna, go check that out. It looks awesome. Shojiro Nakaoka, pen plotter. So always, I can just watch these things for hours. Kind of really want a pen plotter or, yeah. I have friends in Berlin, a friend in Berlin that's actually big on pen plotting. Would love to visit their studio again. Acid Boy GM prints are looking good. So more interesting physical variations. Indeed, that is looking very cool. So lenticular prints. So there's no wire needed for that. You just can, it's just the light will create. So that is that is the real radical thing about these. No electricity required. That is pretty cool. Also, here's Lily Illo. What a truly special package to come home to. The absolutely beautiful craftsmanship of Lily Illo with Kalana Contemporary. This was an awesome show. And so printing it on wood, look at how rich these look. These AI artworks, very nice expression in physical. As 1 hour, I gotta hurry up here, alone. It's a digital collage made on, this is Martin Bruce, MS Paint, Photoshop. We're about to see this. Converted into a GIF. So, interesting title. Alone, very alone. 900 by 700 pixels, edition of 20, and starting to sell. So 6 gone at 20 Tezos each. And there you can see it moving. So, radical artist, one day I'm sure will be at Art Basel at a booth. Yuri J, sketch and final version. It's nice to see these works in progress, see how the sausage is made, as they say. So quite interesting to see how different it becomes, too. What's interesting, too, is the white on blue. It's almost like it's Serrano type, that printing process. I'm trying to remember. Anyways, let's continue. Yuri J, house that I took 4 years ago, house that I took a photo of 4 years ago, but painted just recently. So again, super hyper textured works here by Yuri J. Even the flat areas. So kind of an interesting, almost impressionistic content. Impressionist art style content here as well. I mean, it looks like Alfred, what was his name? the British impressionist who is super amazing, whose name escapes me. Haven't looked at their work in a long time. Kind of has that vibe to it. Shall we look quickly? We don't really have time. Alfred, impressionist, Alfred Sisley. That's who I'm thinking of. It's got a bit of an Alfred Sisley vibe to Yuri J's work here. You see? Not a very accurate version of my grandma's house. My grandma loved Alfred Sisley. She had a reproduction on her kitchen wall. I miss my Nana. Okay, so continuing on. House with fun backyard activities. So lots of just cool artwork here from Yuri J. Mosaic filter, signature, unlisted so far. And here's one more, Shoemaker's House. So lots of cool artwork here, and always does fabulous on Tezos there. Curated by Fake Whale. This was, now sometimes Yuri J puts out photos, same artist, and works with them. It's pretty interesting, this one. I have to say, October, follow back. Of course, I follow Yuri J. And then I thought it went well with this one. Now, can you guess who this is? This is Evil Biscuit. Prominent. Do I not follow Evil Biscuit? Let me just make sure. Because I would like to follow. I think I don't. Okay, so I will follow Evil. I hope one day I'm able to convey myself clearly through the image. So again, another prominent artist in the avant NFT scene. A name that's easier, anyways. Let's continue. I prefer avant NFT. I don't need to consider anything. I don't need to explicate or anything. Scamra. Gorgeous work here. Hard to tell. Sometimes Scamra does some crash works here. What looks like a semi, is that two semis colliding? Is that something else? Gorgeous artwork here. AI artwork, stable diffusion, textual inversion. Mother and child, here's another one. And this is still at auction, only 55 Tezos. So very hyper-textured works from Scamra. Here's another one, posted on X. Very cool edges and margins on this one. So Scamra doing wonderful work. I think this is Thousand Lands, who of course I follow. I do follow them. And here, interesting, kind of almost seems like a combination of photo and perhaps stable diffusion, not sure. Here's Human Boy with an AI dog that is kind of textured out. So interesting piece there. And continuing on, Scandal. Wider Horse for VVV.so, part of the Avant NFT scene, work in progress. Looks interesting, doesn't it? So not sure. Here is Waffles, Hasdrubal Waffle. I know this song. I feel like I know this song. So pretty cool work here. There's ET in the computer. Nice use of this almost blue pen style pixel brush. Goes on for 3 minutes 41. I feel like this is a cover of a song that I know, but I can't remember. Look at this ET work. This is also on Taya, edition of 3. And let's just see what happened here. Burned 1 Tezos each. Trade 1 Tezos. Not sure what's going on. Playing with a different kind of software here, seemingly. Different kind of textures here. So playing with ET just makes it all look so simple and signs it Hannibal. So things continue to shift. And then here, is it Hunter? That is X'd out, not sure. So keeping it interesting here and seeming to continue with the ET theme. Untitled ET Drive-By. And that's what it looks like. So cool work there. From seemingly Waffles, here's the myth for Soft Error for a Comparts show, empty. Kind of a cool family type looking work from the myth. Here is a Michael Jackson work that was burned. Myth it. Cool work here. So not sure if that's going to come back. Here's Rat Cloak, Chop Suey. Pretty dark work here. Continuing with what looks like the Photoshop brushes here, gorgeously, carefully painted, and very dark artwork here in what looks like a landscape, kind of agricultural landscape there. Edgy title. Here's ADIW, or Adieu, your friendly neighbor. Cool Halloween work. We're seeing a few Halloween works here. Nice painting. Edition of 23, and that looks sold out, doesn't it? Oh, 3 years ago. Wow, so this is an older work. Rad artwork. This is Las Delmas. This just came out, Volto Fantasma. And this is 666, edition of 15, one going to Amelia Versace. And there we see what looks like, is that a Grim Reaper? Not sure. Can't remember what that mask is from, but again, Halloween-inspired artwork, clearly. And here we have a work by Lily Illo, just posted on X, kind of more minimal, almost 3D at the top. And so AI artwork, and then at the bottom, kind of more abstract. Here is Jan-Lucas Magone, The Loss, and that is an edition of 1 at 169 Tezos auction. As you can see, the helmets, or sorry, the skeletons. And it looks like one is a headless skeleton that has just been decapitated. The loss, beautiful feeling of loss, of lost your balance on an internal battle. And so auction created 169 Tezos. Here is Enigmatris. Always experimenting and pushing things forward. Big fan of Enigmatris. Look at the response. 559 retweets. Only 66,000 views with that many retweets is amazing. Enigmatris continues to grow, really tapping a nerve there. 28,000 followers. On Instagram, also huge. Big props to Enigmatris. Time, no internet consequences to in real life action. So cool abstract here from Time. And here is Lorna Mills with a Halloween-inspired artwork. And as you see, a pumpkin GIF, edition of 7. Jazzerciser is the title, going for 150 Tez each. Selling out. Here's a Rant Cachatiren, and kind of Halloween looking. Here, is it AI? It must be, but I'm not sure. Pretty cool. Oh, this is bizarre, as Macbeth puts it. 15,000 views, 84 retweets, doing pretty well. Here is No Hygiene, so potentially ugly art, but I say that lovingly to No Hygiene. Definitely an unusual, challenging artist here. As you know, so to those people who are new, maybe, to No Hygiene's work, that come across this video on YouTube, kind of my dream, viewer to a certain degree. We've come a long way to get to this point where we're showing this work. It is not just to be provocative, although part of it is it's so weird. Like, in a sense, I'm not that far away from you. If you're saying, like, why on earth are you showing this? In a sense, like, this artist has built credibility over time where you can start to go, it's just what it is, and it's actually pretty darn interesting. And there is an edginess to it. This artist has built a kind of credibility, No Hygiene, over time by being consistently weird, as I've commented on. So here you see it again. Perhaps challenging is, too easy of a word for me to use here. A 1 of 1 for 150 Tezos, and not selling yet. So nevertheless, this is pretty cool. I was actually sent a few by the artist. I was going to show it anyway. Jezebel. This was one that's on vvv.so, again, part of the Avant NFT scene. And here, I thought this is a really cool series. I think I brought up, here, it's actually got some really cool music, which I recommend you go. I'm not sure, it sounds like real, I'd play it, but I think it sounds copyright to me. Anyway, I thought this series was a lot of fun. And, another thing is, it's once you've been here for a few years, you also start to you find it refreshing getting these kind of aesthetics too, these challenging aesthetics. So it's kind of like in the regular contemporary art scene where if you start going from fair to fair to fair and show to show to show, you start being refreshed by, the new and the challenging. It actually does start to work on you. And it doesn't mean this is like, my favorite aesthetics of all time, but I do find it pretty interesting. It's pretty fun. It's pretty well done. All right. Cool series on bbb.so. Thank you for sending me some. And here's One Don't Knows with a cool collage here with a skeleton on top of a head. Very cool. I think there was a bid on that. Here is Kurt Hustle Collective. I can't show the whole thing of Journal of Sleep. They have given me permission, but I'm worried the show is going to collapse here, or my computer's going to collapse. Look at how beautiful the glitches are. Here's the ice sky. So go check it out. So it's pretty amazing. It goes for 2 minutes. I'm worried the video is going to test my computer too much here. Edition of 10 still available for 100 Tezos. Here's Sign, a new artist we've been looking at here. I think using AI and different softwares. Not sure. Pretty cool. Here's another work. This is on Object, and this is an edition of 25. Still available for 15 Tezos on Primary. Kind of a smaller work there. And again, I think there's animation. I think it's using AI, but I'm not positive. I do follow Sign. Let me just double check here. I do. Okay, excellent. So retweeted 18 times. So just more interesting kind of diagrammatic work with this almost retro type screen imagery. Here's No New Friends, a welcome to cry in the rain. So not sure what's going on here. Pretty interesting piece. Almost these Bambi-like figures with skulls. Again, pretty far out. Here's Mishi Asu with a work. This is on Taya, edition of 18, 4 left. Selling quite well. Again, more challenging artwork here. Again, another one of these artists that we've slowly come to over time, where you see the consistency. I mean, maybe even Nuv 1914 it is challenging work. And so here, but it is sophisticated. Here's kind of fun, almost a bit of a trading card or a magic card type look. And then you see this, frog and almost like a prince or princess. William the Curious, Knight of the Water Lilies, 30 Tezos, edition of 2. Here is a Planta Moneta. Again, what I consider like a gradient artist in large part, that it almost looks photographic here. Or at least done in vector. Not sure. Interesting piece as ever from Nuv 1914 out of Argentina. Lugar Importante. So again, once you put out like hundreds of works along these lines, you do build up a certain credibility. I would argue to those who are skeptical. John Cates, a really interesting glitch artist. Glitches like nobody else, I would argue, and truly embodies the ethos, I would argue, of glitch. And so here is just a cool example. Golden Grief, John Cates, edition of 1, unlisted. Here's a new work from Louis Daisy, Parasite Eve. Cool work here. And reserve of 1 ETH. This is Louis Daisy on Super Rare. Cool kind of cyberpunk kind of work. Here's Strange Thing with a few works. I'm not sure if they're new or not, but it's great to see Strange Thing on the timeline. Again, AI artist, and I believe, and so Renaissance and modern, often like Nike imagery. And here, who is this? Levent Nakaxi, not sure. Natural, so cool work here. Almost looks like it starts from a photograph. Kind of a different take here. Here's Zed. Again, we see the object detection or facial recognition technology. And I think that's the first show I've actually taken 2 sips of water. Anyways, cool looking work here. Here's Die with the Most Likes. If it were asphalt under our nails, so kind of cryptic, kind of a dark work there. Here is Ezra Eslin, Beauty Hurts, a nice piece here on Super Rare. As you see, almost Jonathan Swift style. A big giant line on the ground, like at the start of Gulliver's Travels. Here's Sui Soichi, every 3 words, she shoots upward with a rifle. Really cool, kind of pixel artist, edgy. Here, beautiful work here by Kyle Flemmer. Thuis Basis, work in progress. Kind of looks done to me. This looks awesome. So again, glitch ROM style. Speaking of which, here's Haiti Rocket, classic glitch ROM artist. Here, that's on Taya, and edition of 6. New by Haiti Rocket. Well, looks like a new series here. Pretty cool. So ever experimenting, tons of cool series. This is pretty rad. Look at that. So new one from Haiti Rocket, and that is an edition of 6, Cub X. Here's Nicholas Dietrich. Cool pixel artwork. Blue is the color now at different opacities. Different kind of work here. And so scrolling through with these 2 jars in the front, kind of surrealistic. Here is mech.txt, who of course I follow, keeping no record of wrongs. So kind of religious inspired artwork. Very cool on the left there, this framing device, all of it pretty cool. Red and blue. This is some cool pixel art from Zenyan. Very nice, very minimal, kind of a newer artist we've discovered here, or at least newer account, Sanma. So pretty nice pixel art. Very nice piece here from Dan Anthony Kelly, who does the dogs, the pixel art dogs. Playing off of Matisse here is the dance dogs, edition of 5, very nice piece. This was pretty cool too, Crawler. Just saw this on the timeline and kind of loved it. Looks like it's maybe Japanese or Korean, not really sure. Pretty rad pixel artwork. Speaking of which, here's Right Click Dead, picked up by Alpha Centauri Kid. So a play on X-Copy's work there of the guy in jail, a tribute to X-Copy's Mortal. And how much should this go for? $2,700. Nice sale. Quite a year that Brain Click Dead is having. Here is Jeremy Austin. Got to finish this program. This is on Zero Unbound. This is on chain, and so it has a couple of works like this. So pretty cool. Love the little flashing there. Nice piece. Renato Marini with a couple of works here. Some cool pixel art, kind of Windows 95 icons, all in combination and animated. Here's another one. So cool work there. Here's Loop Killer by Hal 0009. Kind of an artist I've never seen before. This is on Manifold. Cool artwork here. Kind of astronomical. Subject matter, bootloader, new session, work in progress, every step by Loecme. So a couple of interesting vector-based artworks here, abstracts by Loecme. Kind of old school artist on Tezos. Here's Renki with a couple of works, a couple of abstracts. Always interesting. Here's another one. So playing with red and black, kind of beautiful colors here. And continuing as we run through this, Luis Andre Gama. So more of a similar kind of style that's being explored here, animated abstract. And here we have DJ Kiro. So a ROM landscape, I believe he's calling this. So a video game landscape. So you're seeing again, video games and art collide. Here is Macrometria is part of permanent collection of Sovereign's permanent collection. I have a work there too. Nice piece from Macrometria, edition of 1, and this is 84 Tezos. Here is Feels with a cool work on Super Rare. It's a nice piece. Let me make that a little bit smaller. Beautiful work. Reserve of 0.33 ETH. Here's gorgeous work by Xmortal, just flow. Again, playing that combination of pixels and analog video is just awesome. You wonder if it's AI to begin. Not sure on this one. Here it is, as you see, 3-part AI software workflows, so a new one in this series. So again, simulated landscapes here, recently deleted memory, edition of 13, and sold out at how much? 17 Tezos, nice work. Here's another one. This, I believe, is still available on Super Rare. Gonna leave that small, actually, so we don't kill the computer at the end. There we go. Just do a zoom in, and here is Nebular, Look at the Sun. Interesting piece, cool subject matter. That's on Object, edition of 8 for 7 Tezos. And a couple of gorgeous works by Walk. Here's Casper, I think Casper the Friendly Ghost, if I had to guess. This is an edition of 1, and that has sold for 9 Tezos. And look at this electric chair. I think this is at 50 Tezos now. This is gorgeous. Great work to end on. Beautiful work. Probably a homage to Warhol here by Walk, the Great Walk. That is your show, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care.